Hello, everyone, and thank you to the next edition of our Achieving Unity Success Formula about achieving success through unity and helping us all work together. None of us can do this alone. Look at the first screen, the first slide. My gift to you is our Achieving Unity Guide. Please put your information down at the bottom, request the guide. You can also use the QR code on the bottom left. Take a look at the guide, give me feedback, and let's get together and talk about how achieving unity can help us build a better world. QR code on the right is our blog, and I write an article, four per month, two every 2 weeks. Newsletter comes out on the first and third Thursdays of every month. Love you to take a look at it. Give me feedback. The Achieving Unity Success Formula Weekly podcast. Please put this on your calendar and join us each and every week. This is number 35. And every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we're always looking forward to you, your comments. And if you have comments during the podcast, please put them in the notes. We'd love to talk with you. Reality focused dynamics, success focused solutions. That's our drive. And we can do that by achieving unity, all of us working together, building that better world that we continue to talk about, and we need to put it into action. The QR code on the left, that's our website, the website home. QR code on the right is to contact me. If you ever have questions, want to talk about coaching, want to talk about the webinar, want to talk about the stand-up speeches that I do, the keynote speeches. That's where to get in contact with me. Or if you just want to chat, I'd love to hear from you. Proven, compassionate strategies that will turn conflict into lasting harmony. This is at home, this is at work, and it's in every relationship that matters to you. Frustrated by tension? Are we tired of arguing? Are you tired of people arguing with you? Our 7-step roadmap gives you the tools to move from conflict to collaboration quickly and confidently. End that frustration. End it today because we're craving a stronger trust, a stronger connection. Discover communication tactics that build respect, number one, repairs relationships, and unifies teams and families alike. We can transform that conflict into connection together through achieving unity. Unity inspires us in our homes. It shapes society. You see some of the negativity and the division. Talk about this more later. We can transform our workplaces, make the world be as we feel, know, and see it can be. We help you turn frustration into understanding. Probably heard that sometimes. Some people will say, "What the frustration?" That's what it is. It's a frustration of something not working correctly or for our expectations. We need to find value in our actions instead of reacting in that anger or that frustration. We show that anger holds no value. Have you ever been proud of a family member or maybe even a child? Have you ever been proud of a aunt, uncle, parent, any one of your siblings when they got angry? I don't think so. There's no joy to anger. Anger is nothing more than actions not gaining effective results. Anger. Where are there ever any results from anger? You say, "Well, I got angry one time and the guy did what I needed him to do." Could you have done it another way? Did it need anger? No, not at all. Life happens, and it happens in every relationship, from personal relationships to professional relationships, from parenting time to partnerships, from the boardroom to the bedroom and every room in between. We show you how to embrace challenges and encourage a more inspired and inclusive future. The EII, we talk a lot about it in my newsletter. Well, please go check the blog. I'd love to have your feedback. One vision, one goal, achieving unity in every area of life. What's our call to action? Let's ditch that drama. Let's get stuff done. What we can do is show you how to turn your life for what may seem like a dumpster fire at times to a well-oiled machine. Understand, don't join into that anger of others. Don't join into that frustration. Achieving unity is the path to stronger relationship, inspired leadership, and lasting change. Contact us today, realityfocusdynamics.com, or call me, 303-362-8733, and that translates to 3032 focused, reality focused. We can make it real. Our next course is coming up in August, August 7th. It's on Thursdays, 7 Thursdays in a row, 1 p.m. Pacific time to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Positive coaching doesn't just solve problems. It builds bridges to our possibilities. And through the EII, we show how we can encourage each person's growth by replacing criticism with compassion. We can inspire change through hope, not pressure. Every step forward matters. We can include every voice so no one feels unseen, unheard, or unworthy. When we replace that disconnection with empathy and replace that frustration with understanding, we'll create a space for that trust, the collaboration, and shared success. This is how we thrive together, achieving unity. Our next podcast coming up. Again, this is weekly. I want to see you again next week. I have a wonderful guest tonight, which I'll introduce in a second. Next week, Mariana Lead will be here. She'll talk about me, my brand, and why. Who am I? Who am I and why? The following week, Robert Butwin, relationship in a virtual world. When you hear and do what he tells us, you'll do anything well, anything but win, because you will win with Robert. Michael Olson, the silent epidemic. He starts on June 4th. We have 4 podcasts in a row talking about men, fathers, and male parenting, how it has changed over the decades, where a lot of times, including myself, men didn't know how to parent as well decades ago, a century ago. It's a new world today. Through our communication, through our collaboration, we can build better families. And that's what's going to start these next 4. After Michael, Sean Yesner, be here to talk about the widowed parent. It happens to all of us. Let's work together. Then Keith Schumacher has got a great organization called Father Friendly Schools, helping the schools understand more about how fathers are a huge part of the marriage, part of the family, part of the child raising, and schools haven't been associated with that previously. But that's what we will bring together, and he'll be here on June 18th to talk with us. Today, I am so honored. Alan and we've struggled this week trying to get to communication with each other, all kinds of technical problems, but I am very honored to have him on my podcast today. Alan Gatlin, the master of counterintuitive thinking differently. We're going to ask him some questions about that in just a few minutes. Alan is an accomplished educator, business consultant, and sales and management professional with extensive experience in teaching, sales management, and training. And I guess we've been friends, and I should call him Dr. Alan Gatlin, a very educated person with a proven track record in program management, organizational development, and solution-based sales strategies. Alan has consistently exceeded goals and driven organizational success throughout his career. As the founder of J.A. Gatlin, an LLC in San Antonio, Texas, Dr. Gatlin provides expert consulting services in sales strategies, infrastructure development, technology implementation, and organizational restructuring. Wow, some of the most complex situations. And that's what Dr. Gatlin will tell us and talk to us about, as well as how we can build that into our own personal life, because he advises clients on market analysis, sales forecasting, strategic planning, and delivers training and mentoring to improve teams' sales, project management, and technical knowledge. This is going to be such a wonderful hour of understanding and learning. Would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Alan Gatlin?
And Mark, thank you so much for that introduction.
You bet. Alan, how are you today? How are things going for you?
I'm doing well. We're entering a time of heat. This is the first week of 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit in
Oh my
Texas,
gosh,
so it is the time to adjust
that is the time to adjust. Now, what I heard you just say, you're starting a week of, so you're expecting this temperature to last all week?
all week.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry again. Where about in Texas are you?
San Antonio, so it's
Oh,
about
read that earlier.
4 hours south of Dallas and probably about 2.5 hours from the coast.
2.5 hours from the coast. Wow. It's a pretty area, a pretty part of Texas.
It is
Hmm. I've been to San Antonio on what's it, the Riverwalk, that little
the River
river?
Walk. Yes, many
Should
many
say
conventions
little.
are held here.
Hmm. That is excellent. Well, let's introduce you just a little bit, Dr. Gatlin. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and
Yes.
how did you get started in business and teaching and helping others to succeed?
Well, my undergraduate degree is in accounting, and I was in Arizona at the time. And I also completed my certified fraud examiner designation. Frankly, didn't like accounting all that much. I didn't like to be stuck behind a desk just looking at numbers. I'd rather interact with people and situations. And so I was able to get on with the Arizona Superior Court system as a special master, being placed when a company goes into receivership or there are challenges that the management has to be taken out. I would come in and take over, and that really
Wow.
gave me an appetite for under having more understanding both about people and about processes. Later on, I was able to pick up my master's in clinical counseling because understanding yourself and understanding others and how teams work together, or shall we say, don't work together, is a very
Good point.
huge dynamic, especially in sales forces and within management structure. And then lastly, I was able to just prior to COVID, I'd been traveling 5 to 7 days a week. I
Oh,
doing
wow.
essentially company restructures, analysis, both domestic US and international, and I just hit the wall. So I stepped back and set up my own practice, and then COVID hit, so the timing was great. And then also within the last few years, completed the doctorate in organizational psychology. So I tell people I work with
Congratulations.
numbers, people, and processes. So it's a
Numbers, people, and processes.
yeah, so it's a little different way of looking at an organization or looking at an issue because and I work a great deal with entrepreneurs in the $3 to $5 million range, as well as organizations getting ready to sell today. And oftentimes the issues are more related to personalities and people that are driving the numbers issues and problems as well as the organizational structural issues.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I'm glad you brought that up. It's more on the attitudes of people. And whenever you're working with your accounting background and when you're in working with
Mm-hmm.
these companies, a lot of what you're dealing with is pretty much hard facts. I know there's a little bit of play with accounting, and maybe play is not a good word,
Yes.
but it gets into these attitudes. And can you maybe help me with some examples or an example of how an attitude might have impacted, of course, not getting into any
No,
protected information, but
no.
maybe an example of something that might have happened?
Okay. I had a client call today, actually, where the client is actually selling his business. And so we were going through, and pretty much we found a buyer. It's within the same general organization. It's a franchise type of arrangement. And we had a call today with his accountants, his CPAs, because I wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page and in terms of making sure that we minimize tax impact. And also, as we move forward, what's the best structure? And there was some resistance from the accountants, the CPAs,
Mm,
and it was, shall we say, dispelling some of their fear. Not were they losing a client as much as the client was transitioning into another phase in their life. They're still going to have a business. They're still going to be using their services. But it's even interesting I found how seasoned professionals, because these were not younger people, these were
right.
older accountants that have seen a few things and had gray hair. So
They were experienced, right?
and yeah, they were experienced, but yet they filtered their perception through fear.
Wow.
And dispelling the fear was how I spent probably half our time of speaking.
That, that's amazing in some ways. As far as, again, working with accountants in situations like this,
Well, they're people
that's
like everyone else, and they, especially if you do something that impacts their livelihood or their income,
mhm.
or they perceive it as a threat, then you
That's a
feel you feel what you feel, and my role was to dispel that fear using facts, using calming, using accommodation, using all the tools that you would use dealing with an employee or
mm,
managing up within an organization. It's the same set of tools. It's just different applications.
I see exactly what you're saying. And even there, when I'm thinking about the accountant, I'm thinking about the people that are handling the numbers for an organization, I see a lot of black and white.
Hmm.
But as you just mentioned, they're people too. So they may see the black and white, but that emotion, that attitude that you're talking about, that can step in at times, right?
Yes.
And kind of block some of those numbers that may be black and white, maybe positive, maybe negative, but that attitude can possibly redirect some of that thought process.
And the one thing I always encourage people to remember is that you don't know what baggage the person you're about to meet with or you're meeting with has brought into the meeting that has nothing to do with you. They may have had a terrible night and not gotten a good night's sleep. They may have had an argument with their significant other. They may have been cut off in traffic going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
All these things are brought into interactions, and so their perception is their reality. My role then is to, in a sense, alter the reality and bring it back to a common ground and topic that we can both agree and work through.
I so appreciate what you're talking about and hope I'm not wrong here, but I'm hearing some of that doctorate in organizational psychology
Hmm.
come out as you're talking and as you're speaking about some of these situations. Because that type of, I call it the training and that understanding of how people act and react, which I talk about quite a bit and
Yes.
related quite heavily to when you talk about even something as somebody not driving, pulling in front of you on the road and causing road rage, and maybe in some cases, and
Yes.
being somehow part of it or trying to get away from it, can then drag on to work with you
It
and
does.
create impacts in conversations.
It does. And so, being gentle with people, accepting them where they are, as you may, depending on the degree you know them, you can even make comments that using I statements, I feel that maybe we may need to defer or delay this conversation.
Mhm.
I don't sense that this is an appropriate time, that there may be other distractions happening right now. And then that sometimes resets them and saying, "Oh, no, it's okay. We can go forward just because." And I'm just saying I feel it's what I perceive of them, not that, well, you're acting all tense, you're acting all
Exactly.
defensive. That you statement will get you in a lot of trouble. It's the I statement that is the calming and consolidating.
I appreciate that so much. And I hope, as we were talking about earlier in my newsletter, one of my articles is about get the you out of here. You know, I heard that saying, get the out of here, get the you out of here, because so many times we use that you word,
It's
you this,
accusatory.
you that.
It's
It's
accusatory.
accusatory. It is. So
Absolutely.
well said. And so maybe you can help me also. That was a great example. How about a moment in your life and your career that maybe has really pushed you toward that coaching and leadership? As you said, you started out a little bit more toward the accounting, but you didn't do numbers.
Right.
Maybe what do you think may have helped push you, maybe the moment or maybe the incident or situations toward more of the
Well,
coaching and leadership?
I think it's the depth of experience. There is it required that you have a deep, wide breadth of knowledge and experience to be able to be a good coach or consultant? And the answer is, of course, no. However, the more life experience you have with a variety of situations, particularly international. Our business has become very international, or at least it had been historically. And understanding other cultures, understanding how people react to other cultures, and all of those interactions is not something that you can easily learn. It's something that really has to be experienced. So I really believe that living abroad for 2 years in the south of France and working there for the company Lucent Technologies back in the day
Wow.
helped me to gain a perspective and an understanding of both myself as well as to see others. And then I don't know that I plan to go into consulting coaching as much as it evolved into it. I was open to the possibility, especially when I just really found that health wise, I could not maintain a constant travel schedule, insanity
That
wise.
sounds, and help me out here too, because that's what I'm hearing. Because when you're traveling that much, were you saying 5, sometimes 7 days a week?
Yeah.
What does that do to you and your family?
Well, it led to one divorce
Sorry to hear
ultimately,
that. Yeah.
but
Hmm.
my second, we've been together for over 30 years now. So
Oh,
it's a matter,
congratulations.
oh, thank you. So, I mean, it's a matter of prioritization and understanding. The more that you recognize limitations, not in a bad way, but as an opportunity to change and to grow. I think that's where evolution comes. It's not that I had to, it's more that I kind of wanted to.
Yeah.
And then these
And
things started to become available to me as options.
that is excellent. I like your story. That is true that a lot of us, too many of us, don't see that, and that your ability to move from that and understand that it's better all around is a great step forward. Again, like I said, a lot of us do not see, and I talk to a lot of people in my coaching
Hmm.
that is that way. And you mentioned priorities, because priorities are so important.
Yeah,
If we don't have a priority for ourselves, someone else is going to have a priority for us.
you're so true. And I believe one of the I'm not going to say secrets, but I think one of the solutions, at least for me, was having an ongoing mentor or series of mentors. I have a coach right now that I meet with weekly that is a paid coach. That has been a lifesaver and able to help me stay focused. I have a business plan. I have an active business plan. It's a very dynamic one that I maintain. But still, I can get the bright, shiny object syndrome where something
Yeah.
looks really good and I want to go over here. And having someone that I meet with on a weekly basis really helps pull me back in and have a sounding board. I think so many business professionals, men and women, lack that. And that's how I think they get. I have seen so many get in trouble physically, emotionally, financially, just by not having someone to resonate and say it, because when you say it, it is so powerful because then you're a different part of the brain actually analyzes and puts it into perspective. Maybe the right thing to do, but until it's like
Mhm.
if you think it, you never write it, you never say it, you really don't know.
And that's one, two quick questions here on that. Number one, I like the way you talked about it, male or female, a mother or father, man or
Doesn't
woman.
matter.
It's not gender. It's not gender biased in
No,
any way, manner, shape, or form.
no.
It's about learning and building that going forward. And I just got off a call about an hour ago talking with a client, and that's what we talked about was to break it down, write it down. And I think that you were just talking about too, write
Yes,
it down.
yes,
And then I talk also about review its dependencies. What are your dependencies in the
yes,
process? Is it one dependent upon another? And then get it done. Once you
yes.
know that, once you break it down, write it down, review its dependencies, get it done. It's basically bid, wid, rid, gid, and help ourselves as well as others get to the point where they can make that decision
Hmm.
and grow to that next step, right?
In project management, the tools use something called a Gantt chart,
Yes.
G-A-N-T-T,
Hmm.
which is basically a visual representation of dependencies against time, tasks against time. And it is surprising to me how often this is not utilized within management. Yet every business faces challenges, faces tasks. Most management is really about task orientation. And yet they often do not have a clear understanding of what the chain of events that will occur to reach their end goal, whatever that goal is, and then to work it backwards. And if something goes wrong in the timeline, what does that mean?
And that's a great point. And you talk about that Gantt chart. Too many times that Gantt chart gave us too much of that, those numbers, that black and white, and it provided an accountability matrix that
Hmm.
I had. I started out with the Gantt chart back in Microsoft Project many, many years ago, the
Of
program
course.
management, project management you're talking about. You make an excellent point, Alan, because it definitely showed here's when something needs to be done. Like you said, it's that time measurement. And when you put that accountability pinpoint into what we do personally as well as professionally,
Yes.
that can place a challenge upon each of us, right?
And it does. When I have an initial consultation with a client or a potential client, I show them going through the common issues. I first ask them, well, what do they think are the challenges within their business? And then I have a program that does an analysis of this, setting up a Gantt chart, but also establishing KPIs, key performance indicators,
Right.
that are relevant to and directly related to the task that they've identified. It then lays it out in that type of graphical representation. But I tell them Gantt is not religion. It is not a obsession, or it's a not a must do, it is a can do. And life changes, and these types of things need to be dynamic enough that if situations warrant, only when it's warranted, that adjustments are made. But otherwise, that you have goals and objectives, criteria that you're looking to meet.
And that's something I run into a lot on the coaching side is you make some great points about it can be adjusted. It things can change. Life does happen,
Yes.
but there are a lot of times people don't want to say, well, that's business. That's not personal. But
It's
yet
all it's
many
all
times,
personal. It's all personal.
could you, thank you. One more time.
Yeah, it's all
It's all
personal.
personal. It is, and that's where that's the base because we
Right.
are the ones doing this.
Right.
We're the
I've
ones that
all,
make business. Go ahead, please.
and I've also learned something, that there are generational differences. For we're both probably close to the same age. In our generation, identity, especially for a man, but we'll talk about what's happening now, more for a man was tied to what they do. And if they lose, that's why, we talk about how life expectancy changes when somebody retires. If they are not having a succession plan, well, now what do I do with myself? Uh, that has changed with some of the succeeding generations, in that now women are also facing some of that challenge. But health, I think it's very healthy that also, especially some of the younger people in their 20s and 30s now, are coming out and not tying their identity to their job title. but are looking more of understanding, the self realization of, well, who am I as a person? Yes, I do this, but I'm also a parent. I'm also this. I'm also that. And in many ways, that's, I think, a healthier perspective than what our generation came up with.
It is, and that's one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, I have 4 podcasts coming up in June, all about
Fatherhood.
dads and fathers and parenting as a dad and father. Well, in August, I have the same thing on the moms and the mothers
Yes.
because you're saying, and one of my domains is the best parent is both parents.
Yes.
And what you're talking about now, where people are being able to say, I may be a doctor, an engineer, whatever my career may be, male or female, mother, father, man
Yes.
or woman, I am still a mother or a father to
Yes.
children.
Yes.
And that ability for us to bring that out. And I was raised the same way my dad was the wage earner. My
Yes.
mother did work some, but that was still the aura, the
Yes.
culture that came out in. Well, that's
Now,
changed a lot now. Go ahead.
it really has. And if we, for instance, I had the opportunity to work in many multi-international environments. It is imperative that you understand the culture, or something about the culture that you are working within if it is not your own. I worked with, there are two types of basic cultures. There's individualistic cultures, which is the Western world, pretty much.
Mhm.
And then there's collective cultures, which are often represented in Asia and the Pacific. I had a great many contacts with China, with Japan, with other
Wow.
collective societies. And the way that you manage them and work with them and how they see themselves, they're not just a person that's a manager. They're not just a VP. They see themselves fitting within a society and performing the roles within the society. And within Western society, we don't have that as much. I think
Mhm.
we're getting to it. And is probably a healthier view. Now, some of their problems is sometimes they lose themselves in their society and they have a hard time becoming task focused. But
Mm.
it's just all dependent upon the multinational environment you're working in, and if you're managing people, to understand what their priorities are and what their prejudices and biases are
Mhm.
as best you can.
And that's right. And that's one of the things that I'll talk about also, and maybe you and I could talk about it one time together, is no matter who we are, and I teach on it all the time about biases and
Hmm.
the prejudices and how many there are, yet we all have,
We do.
for brief moments at a time, but we all have those within ourselves.
We do.
And that ability to control that, right? To understand it and see what our next step must be when those feelings come across,
Yes.
right?
And for
Mhm.
those individuals that fail to observe that or fail to understand themselves and what their, at least the overt prejudices and biases are, will not be as good of a manager, a parent, a partner, as if they have awareness and are able then to find solutions around how to cope and how to minimize those situations where, because it's an emotional response.
It
These are
is.
things that are ingrained within us, and if you don't see that flag pop up, uh, usually negative things happen.
And there's some things I work on as well. I'll even be closing about this in a minute because sometimes the simple things that we think about during the day, such as a disconnection,
Hmm.
we not connected with someone or something causes a disconnection between two people, can
Yes.
create a hate. But yet we're not hateful people, but that disconnection from someone or something as simple as a lifestyle
Yes.
can create a little bit of hate in the process. And then sometimes the frustrations that we have,
Yes.
frustration from driving to work, frustration from that person that pulled in front of you, and some of the other frustration you talked about earlier, those can cause a little bit of anger within us.
Yes.
And I talked about anger earlier, but actions not gaining effective results. They can
Yes.
all cause things with us on a day-to-day basis. And if we can't control those, we don't think to control those,
Yes.
they control us.
That's why I think having a mentor, having a coach, having whoever is like looking at yourself in the mirror with someone else who can really see you. Now, obviously, they also have their same set or different sets of biases and prejudices and circumstances, but hopefully they can reflect back to you what they're seeing for you to say, oh, well, it looks like there's something I need to think about and examine and how best to correct, particularly as a manager. Because as a manager, you're held to a different standard, rightfully or wrongly,
Right.
than a worker. And if you don't realize that and you don't address that appropriately and relate to it, then you will not be as effective, or in many cases, you'll be ineffective.
And does that come from, as you're mentioning, when you have a title, and sometimes that is a label,
Yes,
there are expectations
yes,
that are tied to that
yes.
that title or the label.
With yourself and others.
Mhm.
Others have that same. If you're vice president, then it's a matter that, well, I should act a certain way or I should dress a certain way, or other people have the expectation, well, then you obviously are X, fill in the
Mhm.
blank, which may or may not be true. And in most
Right.
cases they aren't. I mean, they're not necessarily valid, but they're societal, their company culture. Every company has a personality.
Right.
And understanding that personality is also very important, and acting appropriately within the rules and regulations of that family entity.
It is. And the ability for us to understand certain parts of every culture, politeness, just the respect, that must be the same. We must all remember that no matter what level or what position that we may be in, that level of caring and understanding needs to be there
Yeah.
at all levels. And it's not that all managers or senior managers have it and a worker doesn't. The worker needs to have those types of, they need to be trained, they need to be taught because they may not be yet.
and
But
and
that
just
type,
depending whether it's technology or technology companies are, I think, the hardest, because you've got a lot of really
true.
smart people. Unfortunately, they may have very little emotional intelligence. uh, and interpersonal interactions are often the crux of issues within those companies.
Mhm.
But even manufacturing and other less technical or highly educated groups, there still are all these things. Assuming is really will get you in a lot of trouble. Observe and then take appropriate action based upon what you observe that the employees or the family needs. If you look at a company as a family, I think it changes the whole dynamic of its operations. And you treat
It
people
does.
differently, hopefully.
And we hopefully will grow and treat people better,
Yeah,
that we learn from our emotions because everything that we do, we need to view it and learn from it
right.
and always be in that, because there's old terms for it, but that continual life improvement, sometimes called continual process improvement in the
Yes,
business world, but
yes,
that continual improvement to see what we've done and how we could have done it better
yes.
and and,
Here,
and then build.
yeah, here in San Antonio, we are a Hispanic majority population, and I think that's South Texas in general. So for
Mhm.
those organizations you work with in Texas, it is very likely that many English is, first of all, it's not their first language.
No,
And there can even be languaging issues that connotate differently to them than it does to you. And so even choosing your words and making sure that you're clearly communicating what you're trying to say rather than just passing it off, it becomes just a needed function that some people forget.
yep. And that's one of the things I hear you're saying also, that with, and I was raised in southeastern New Mexico for the majority of my life,
Oh,
which also
okay.
had a higher
Yes.
Hispanic population. And one of the biggest things that we need to understand, and I teach this and preach this in my um, keynote speaking,
Yes.
is we are all the same. All of us. We have there's four blood types in this world. And I'm
Yes.
saying world, around the world, whether we're being China, Russia, Australia, Antarctica, New Zealand, wherever it may be, there's four blood types, and we are all the same. We
Yes.
talk about our Hispanic culture because of where back in the day we were all together in that way, and we did more because of that specific culture.
Yes.
Today we've expanded more, and our cultures are more intermixed, and it's
Hmm.
not as controlled maybe in some ways.
More
It's
clear
opening
cut.
up as clear cut,
Yeah.
and we're opening up more in this world. We're much more global. I joke about the other day. I was talking to one of my friends in my nonprofit, Damien, who is in Rwanda, Africa. And
Yes.
then later, I was talking to a person in Ukraine, and this was just an hour or 2 hours apart. This world has gone so small
Yes.
in so many ways that we can eliminate. And that's what I teach, preach, and reach on is eliminate some of those biases, as you mentioned earlier, and those
Yes.
prejudices you mentioned earlier. And how do you think being raised in South Texas, how do you think that may have impacted you on what you teach today?
Well, I was raised in Eastern Kansas. I've been in South Texas
That's right.
for 4 years.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I came from, Midwest. I spent in Arizona 20 years and then 22 years in California, Southern California. So seeing again where I lived was irrelevant as long as I could get to an airport. I told
Good
people
point.
when I was
Mhm.
living there that sometimes I could tell you more restaurants in Paris than I could in San Diego. So
Wow.
and I was only half kidding, not 100% kidding. But one
Right.
one of the things that I've worked with managers on is viewing their employees under the structure of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That is the one of the I see one of the unifying truths within we all have the need for physical security. We all have the need for emotional security. We all want to walk up that pyramid. And that starts to brush away many of everything from clothing to languaging to all the different things. If you understand and see a person that has a need for the basics and they are not having those needs met, then there are going to be issues. If employees come to work hungry, if employees come to work underhoused or lacking transportation or these other basics, it's not necessarily employers' responsibility to do that, but to understand that these deficiencies will impact their ability to do their work.
I so agree with you. And then that is what we had talked about and it's bringing up about business ethics, as you so well know, in multicultural environments. And that right there is the multicultural of not being able to drive to work. I mean, that could be something that it's definitely something that brings an extra weight on their shoulders, on their back,
Yes.
coming to work every day, right? And it's just like the road rage that we talked about that they bring to work. Sometimes that road rage is once in an extended period of time, but
Or
someone who
not.
has issues, depending on where you live. You mentioned Arizona, so yeah, that's another
Oh
area
yeah.
that's
Well, here's crazy what people
yeah,
drive. And they all
But
carry guns.
yeah. And Denver is I-25 north south in
I-25.
Denver.
Yep,
It's kind of the same way.
it
But
really
that
is.
cultural process of us learning, I mean, there's so much here I think we could talk about,
Yes.
Alan, but it's as you were just mentioning, the ability for people to get to work and how they get to work and where they live and just the whole process, our multicultural environments that we see every day now that didn't they existed decades ago, but not to the impact that
Yes.
we're seeing today, right?
One thing I'm also seeing that has, to me, a very strong negative is it used to be, and again, in our generation growing up, there was a division or a divide between management and functional
Hmm.
labor. For a while there, we had management that was very heavily engaged. And in technology companies, I think they still are to a degree, to understand and know their employees, or at least the people that they directly work with, or have an understanding. Well, now it seems that we're moving back to an era where management sits in their tower and doesn't understand, and in some cases doesn't care about the challenges and the issues related to the people who do the work for them. And
Mhm.
that disparity is problematic to me, at business ethically wise, but I think also in terms of gaining productivity and loyalty. Companies, they say they want loyalty, but they don't give it. Look at the layoffs that are occurring throughout Seattle, Washington. Boeing lays off 20,000. Microsoft lays off 1,900, almost 2,000 people. Meta laid off,
Mhm.
all within a very short period of time, and without impact, or in some cases you could say without caring about the impact. And these are with the exception of Boeing, were profitable companies that were just looking to increase their profitability, not trying to turn a company around.
And that's you said a lot right there too, because as you're saying, a lot of it is to increase profits, but we're not able to see who was laid off and who wasn't to even be able to better judge about how many of the people laid off were, again, as the rumor goes, when we don't know,
Yes,
more of the theoretical worker bee, as they're called, compared to
yes,
the management bee, and how much of the management has remained. And
yes,
there's a challenge there for us to understand that most cases we will not know or not learn from. I
right.
worked for MCI many years ago,
Hmm.
and that was one of the things they would hire us and we'd work for X amount of time, 1 year, 2 years, whatever the time might be,
Yes,
and then they go through a big layoff. And then there was
yes,
one time, for example, I was working for them. I was laid off. I had an 8 week severance, but they
yes,
hired me back as a contractor 9 weeks later. So
of
I was
course.
theoretically 1 week without pay, but laid off through their mismanagement in a lot of ways.
Yes, yes,
And that's all it was. It was a crazy situation. Amazed
right.
me as we talking through the
And
process. But
and those bad old days are returning to some extent.
is it
And
right?
I'm afraid it may. And if we do go into a recession, which may be happening, cyclically, these things happen on a somewhat regular basis, or kind of do. Uh, I think choices are made, and even on the smaller business scale, I think sometimes choices are made without understanding the impact overall on the productivity of the business and how it affects your individual workers. You want to decimate, the morale of people, just start laying people off. Yeah,
Exactly.
especially when they
People
have
that
no understanding, or they're seeing big bonuses, or they're seeing all of these perks given to a select few, and reporting profitability and everything else, but yet people are losing their jobs. The incongruence of that speaks volumes.
it speaks volumes. I so see what you're saying and agree that process. And as we've got about 12 more minutes left right here,
Yes,
this time has gone so fast with all the great conversations. But let me ask you a couple of
of
questions here.
course.
Let me start with this one. You've worked with a lot of different people.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. You worked with a lot of different people. What do you think might be one way that you can help them maybe find some of that common ground, even when they're different?
Is asking them to stop and think rather than just act. And again, sometimes we get so tied to goals, to objectives, to KPIs, um, at every level, that we often do not think, and I've been guilty of this as well, not thinking, was there a kinder or better way to do this to accomplish the same thing, rather than taking a harsher, sometimes swifter tactic. They're seemingly swifter, but at a cost of later that we did not intend or understand. So
I
I tell
agree.
people to slow down
Mhm.
and consider the impact of your actions, and look for alternatives. Doesn't mean you'll do them, But just the fact that you took a step back to consider it likely will mean that you will make a better decision and a softer decision in terms,
And I think
especially.
you mentioned, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
You mentioned even in the beginning, like you were in accounting to begin with, you didn't
Yeah,
like accounting, you wanted to get out with more of the people. But if we had more of those, maybe as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, more of the accounting numbers that where is the greatest profitability within the company, but yet where were the layoffs the highest? And truly have a justification of the people that were laid off from that company compared to where the profitability was in the company. Do we have that ratio? Can
well,
we see?
I can tell you and give you another example of one that I worked with in the last few months that they wanted to make a reduction in middle management, thinking that those are the most highly, and indeed they are the most highly compensated in terms of people. So, but they also had the vast knowledge, wealth of experience and knowledge, the tribal knowledge of how to do things and how to do things well. So across the board, they eliminated categories of jobs. Now, the impact of that has turned out to be they did not do us. First of all, I really suggest and strongly recommend that a profitability analysis be done not based upon the the gross or the collective profit, but the type of tasks and activities that
Right.
generate the most profit. And then you fortify those. Now, that may mean you sell a division or you do whatever, but to arbitrarily cut positions just because they make a lot of money doesn't also mean they're not making you a lot of money.
Mhm.
And
Well said.
that's the mindset that I think people sometimes forget. Where are you making your money? Is this action going to actually impact that? Are you really going to save, or are you really just hurting yourself in the long run?
Mhm. And sometimes they will keep the people that are working overtime when they're not quite justifying why they're working that overtime. Is
Well,
it
or
because,
there's a lot of nepotism that goes on, a lot of friends, family, buddies that are hired, and even in public companies. It's surprising the amount of people that are hired in management positions that probably do not have the skill set or shouldn't
Mhm.
be in those positions, but yet you're not going to lay off your friend.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's what we want to make sure that we understand the difference between building from my perspective is we want unity and we want friends, but we have to draw the line. And that's
Yes,
one thing that some people have a hard time with.
yes,
If in a situation such as this, if you have someone that is a friend, but is not helping you earn a profit, but someone that's not a friend, but helping you earn a profit or benefit in some way, because it's not all business. Like you said, it
no,
is personal.
yes.
You've got to be able to choose
Well,
fairly.
understand the difference and understand the difference. Most people are reasonable. Now, there are those that are not. But when a valid and thorough explanation is given of a situation, most people, they may not like it, but they'll understand why. It's the arbitrary or seemingly no logical reason decisions. Those are the ones that generate ill will and
Yes.
cause tremendous damage within the company or organization. Not for
So
profits are as
true.
guilty as this is for profits.
So true. As we get a little bit close here, we get a couple more of these. How can you help people? I love what you're doing. How you have a great foundation and how you're helping people. But how can you help people? And it's all personal, but how can you help people grow their business without losing that personal touch? It's what I use that word unity, without losing that personal touch and unity
Yes.
that
Yes.
made it special in the first place.
I really believe that, especially, and again, I'll fall back to technology companies. I was a part of an organization that was later bought by Lucent that I was employee number 48. When we sold, it was 4 or 500. But we knew each other intimately
Wow.
because we were working 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week sometimes. But the point being that management communicated regularly and in detail, probably over communicated the reasoning for certain actions and decisions that they didn't need to. Over communication is often more beneficial and less detrimental than under communicate. Under communication is the kiss of death. As
It
companies
is.
grow, communication lines tend to be severed. And restoring and actively maintaining communications from the top to the bottom, just like having a mission statement. Every employee should understand and personalize the mission statement, in my belief, to get the highest and best good. If they don't even know what it is, then that's problem number one. And if they
That's
don't
problem
know
number one.
what how their action enables the mission statement, that's problem number two. That's
Because if they
communication.
don't, it is. It's one of those situations. If we don't know where we're going, it doesn't matter which way we turn.
Nope.
We have got to know. We must know what just in our mission, going toward our vision. Where are we going? What is our end result? And there's got to
Yes.
be one somewhere. Back to your Gantt chart you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
There's got to
Well,
be some measurement.
and having a plan. You don't have to give the intimate or minute details of a business plan down to the janitor, but an appropriate level of communication to service people is critical because first of all they then are buying into your vision
Mhm.
and they will work harder and I think more effectively if they understand the why and buy into that than if they don't.
I
They're
I
not, it's
still
not
agree
just a
with you.
job.
It's not. It can't be. And you're saying so much when you say that. And as we're talking here about to close, what's one final message? You help a lot of people. You help a lot of companies, and I know, and you know, you've impressed me. I'm impressed by what you do. What's one final message that you could share to our audience, our listeners, especially those who want to grow, those who want to stay connected and succeed through what I call unity? What's one
Mhm.
message that you think could help the people that are listening today with what you do?
I think it's two pronged. The first is don't be afraid to say you made a mistake or that there could have been a better way of doing something. And the second is to have either a group of people, a mastermind group, for that's kind of the popular term right now, or a group of trusted peers that you can be honest with and reflect with and get constructive feedback with. But I think that first thing of at all levels, if you make a mistake, is own it and then do something to rectify it. And the second is, which often leads to that first, is having a reflective group that can help you be honest and stay honest with yourself.
And that is so true. And then be able to make that mistake, be honest about it. And if you're not making them over and over, it's something we all need to celebrate.
Yes.
Because as they say, was it Edison that in the phone that made 10,000 mistakes? And
Light bulb.
no, no, no. Sorry,
It was a light bulb.
light bulb.
The created the
That's what light
filament.
bulb.
They had to
Yep,
choose,
the filament.
because
There
never
you go.
been done
Thank you.
before.
And he said, I didn't make 10,000 mistakes. I found
Yes.
10,000 ways it did not work.
Yes. Different
And that
perspective.
that's this, yes. And that's it's all about the things sometimes that we look at today that we don't test enough. And that's and
Yeah.
definitely a push for testing and understanding something as simple for us today as a light bulb to what it took him to make in so, so long.
Yes.
Alan, thank you so much for your time
Well,
today. I
thank you.
appreciate it. This has been awesome. And I think you've opened up a lot of great thoughts for a lot of our listeners. And this will be on the internet. We will have it out here shortly. So please check back with me. We'll put it out there. It'll be on YouTube. Somebody can listen to us again. Any final comment, Alan, before we
Is
close?
continue to move forward, continue to strive even when you don't feel like it. That consistency and persistency, I think, are two of the attributes that we need more of in the world today.
I so agree with you. And I think that bit about continuing on, as I say, collaboration through the Achieving Unity Success formula.
Yes.
That is what eliminates the disconnection and the frustration and the negativity that's dividing us personally and professionally around the world today. Let us work together in
Yes.
unity by harnessing the power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others as we take action to end that disconnection, in that hate, in that frustration, in that anger, and that prejudice, in building better businesses, better
Yes.
lives, and a better world today. Dr. Alan Gatlin, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time. We appreciate it. We can do it and do it together in unity. Cheers.